Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope you guys are in the mood for something interesting today. We've been working around the clock to give you guys the Global Summit, so it has been very, very busy. And thank you for all the emails that we're receiving. It really is appreciated, and I'm glad to see students are joining in numbers, so that's great stuff. And I see YouTube is also vibing very nicely. So welcome to the Global Summit. I'm David Hopstad. I'm going to be the program director for this event today. And I'm so grateful for all you guys coming and joining us on this first time event that we're having such an event from the Adolf team. So I'm going to hand over to our executive director, Prof. Magano, who is part of the DTSFL, and she's going to introduce us and welcome us in the context of this event over the next 3 days. Over to you, Prof. Magano.
Thank you, Mr. Hopstad. I hope you'll share my slides. I'm in a compromised location. If possible, just share my slides. My name is Mayahabo Daina Mahano, a professor in psychology of education. And I want to say I'm thrilled today to meet you, and you came in numbers from the department that I'm leading, that is tuition support and facilitation of learning. I'm just excited that once more we are meeting with you from all corners of the world. I want to say that this is a very topical issue on climate change and how are the global voices. And as we meet in the summit, I want to say that you are all welcome at the University of South Africa as we are hosting you online today. I want to say to the Unisons, on behalf of the Principal and Vice Chancellor, Professor Linkabula, and all the Vice Principals, Extended Management Committee, the student body, the National Student Representative Council, and the team that enabled this, that is the ADOF team, the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub. We appreciate this moment of meeting with the world. Global Voices Climate Summit 2025 in collaboration with DICE. We are really very happy. In the second slide, let us see what the summit is all about and how are we going to unpack the objectives. The key objectives of the summit are as follows. This is part of the project that we have within UNISA, that is Student Digital Resilience Deliverable, that is Green Technology Campaign for students in CODEL. What is CODEL? The Comprehensive Open Distance and E-Learning Institution. We are an e-learning institution. We are really thankful that all the students that will be engaging on this topic of climate change, they will also think about the virtual environment. So where we are and how are we transcending, and what is the global community saying? The awareness raising by highlighting important issues among stakeholders and knowledge sharing. This is important because from the keynote speakers, we are going to hear what they are experiencing in the four corners of the world from their context. And we'd also love to look at the objective of providing opportunities for attendants to connect, access, and engage on this module that is the STU 501 Model United Nations training course. The course will also unpack further what the climate change is all about and showcasing the experiences gained from the MOOC and the summit. And in the third slide, we will be looking at the outline from the 18th, that is today, and up to the last day of the summit. There will be campaigning the youth engagement. You know, young voices are important. We cannot ignore our young voices when they engage on the topic of climate change and green technologies. And then campaign number 2 is Climate Summit engagement sessions. 1 to 5 of the delegates in a closed session will be engaging on this topical issue. Then campaign 3, the economic capacitation and empowerment of youth for engagement in climate change. While the world is experiencing a high unemployment rate, how do we empower our young ones? How do we instill in them the entrepreneurial skills so that they are able to fend for themselves? And no one should be saying, I do not have a job, I can't be hired, or I can't be absorbed in the world of work. But there should be that creativity of saying, even though we are experiencing challenges in climate change, what entrepreneurial skills can I develop? And then in the fourth slide, let us see who and how the summary of the MOOC is like. During the 2024, since this started last year, the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub that is within UNISA, the ADOF, in collaboration with the DICE, created and developed this course. And we are happy that the UN came on board, and this is, I can say, a very important collaboration that one can think of. Hence, we really want to appreciate the leadership, the colleagues that are in ADOF, and also the UNISA community and the external community. The course was launched on the 1st of September in 2024. Completed into November 2024. Each week, the facilitators will present different lessons from the course and engage the students in an interactive manner. The interaction is important. It cannot be just a one-way traffic, but a dual modality is important. And to date, there are 1,022 participants registered for the MOOC. The students who completed the MOOC were invited to apply for the summit. So I hope all the delegates that are here, I see the numbers are rising. We are now at 165. Most of you are aware of what this MOOC is all about. Thank you. The next slide. Now we see the keynote speakers. I can see the faces that are radiant. These are the keynote speakers that will be engaging with us from today up to the end of the summit. Mr. James Rila and Ms. Mudiehi Mafantiri and Dr. Ariel Prinsloo. These are not only the keynote speakers that will be engaging on this topic. In the next slide, we'll also see other speakers, also young and vibrant. These ones will be engaging more on the economic capacitation and empowerment of youth for engagement in climate change. So we have Ms. Nkemeling Mukwaledi, very young, Ms. Yasira Madi, and Mr. Yibanati Magdina. So these are the speakers. In the next slide, let us also try to say to all the members of ADOF, the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub, the UNISA community, the UN community, and the global community that is gathered here this afternoon. We say you are welcome at the online platform of the University of South Africa and the virtual platform where engagements will be robust. And I want to thank the program director, Mr. Hapstad. This is going to be a happy day. It's raining in South Africa and we are enjoying the calm rain. Let it continue to rain for this climate of joy, climate of engagement, young people who are carrying the globe forward. Thank you, program director. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Prof. Magano, and we much appreciate it. We do understand you're extremely busy and we do release you from the event today, but we do appreciate the welcome that you've given and the overview. And yes, a hand of applause is most welcome, guys. So you're most welcome to clap your hands. Thank you so much, Prof, for that. And now, without further ado, let's quickly have a look at the program, because I think that's quite important so you guys can see what we're covering today. So let me just reshare my screen. That's the fun thing of having dual screens, guys, is that you've got to jump between them and carry on. So let's quickly have a look. All right, so the program, guys, is as follows. So we've had the welcome from Prof. Thank you so much. Then we're going to delve right into the speakers. And we've got 3 different speakers lined up, but I'll introduce them as we come along. Then we have got a very exciting element. We have got 5 different students who completed the MOOC, and they are actually going to be presenting what or how did they experience the MOOC, the experience, and of course having a facilitator that is actually based in India, and we were running classes in the evenings because of course there's a time difference of a few hours. So it was very interesting. So we're going to hear from our students, our participants who were in the MOOC itself from last year. Then, of course, it's going to go into the theme and the committee and agenda. That's from the DIAs. Now, again, these are the guys that were actually doing the facilitation last year. So we are going to hear from them, who their facilitators are. And as you would have seen what Prof. Magano shared with you, we have a program which is open today where everyone can come and join in. Then we also going to have a closed sessions where the delegates, and now you might notice that some colleagues already got their flags up, right? So these guys are part of the process. So they're going to be engaging in their committees because based on what they've done in the MOOC, they've got a sound foundation and they're going to be discussing very important topics. Now, the very important element is on Thursday, they are then going to be presenting to us exactly what they've been up to since today. So please do again join us on Thursday. Hopefully the reminders will go out again so that you guys then can actually come in here and see exactly what have these delegates been up to with the facilitator. So we're going to get to meet them as well. So as you can see, guys, we've got quite a jam-packed session that we're going to have. So without further ado, I do see the speakers have already joined us. I'm going to ask James Reeler to please, you can switch on your camera and welcome yourself, and then we'll see if we can get your presentation running. So there we go. So over to you, James.
Fantastic, thank you. And hi, everybody. It's really a privilege to be here. I'm just going to see quickly if you can all see my presentation here.
Yes, looks great.
Fantastic. Okay, good. So I have sort of 15 minutes to introduce this topic, and followed by some very good speakers. I have Mariachi and Ariel, so I'm happy to have them following me. A little concerned that I may not live up to expectations there. Okay, so just quickly, obviously you're all here because you're concerned about climate change and essentially what do we do about it. And this is a little animation that has been done just showing since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Essentially, if you look at that circle, those are the global temperatures, and you can see each year they're increasing, but the rate of increase over the last few years has just been phenomenal. And that graph on the right there is particularly for South Africa, but you can see that we've gone well beyond that 1 degree limit, and actually you're reaching towards the 1.5. And in fact, by some measures last year, we exceeded that. And so, I mean, what does that mean? We tend to think of it in terms of the impacts on humans. And obviously, if you look at the top of this, if you were born in 1940, or if you're born in 1980 like me, you will be probably 80 years old in the middle of the century, and you'll be seeing some of those impacts. The sort of up to 2020, those are all as sort of red warmer years. But you can see going into the future, depending on what we do, we could be going to some extremely high temperatures or a sort of more moderate climate change. But whatever happens, it is locked in. And for the youth of today, who are going to be sort of in their 80s later in the century, this is of particular concern. But we're already feeling those impacts today. And so the drivers of this climate change, obviously, there's sort of the big drivers of nitrous oxides, which are largely from fertilizers. We've got methane, which is coming from livestock and from our burning of fossil gas. And the big one is carbon dioxide. And that's coming obviously from our burning of fossil fuels, but also from what we're doing on the land. And that's a very, very important consideration, which we'll come back to. Okay, so I don't think I'm going to go into too much depth about the impacts of climate change because I think many of you are very conversant with them. But the point here of this is to try and think about what do we do going forward. And the point of departure really is, are we fixing it? So the graph on the right there is an illustration of the trajectories that we would need to follow to get to the 1.5 degrees or the 2 degrees that we are enshrined in the Paris Agreement. Those are supposed to be our targets, all efforts to get to 1.5 degrees. And this is in terms of the emissions that we would be putting out, and just going to 2030. Now, if we look at actually what is in our current nationally determined contributions as the world, we are conditionally saying, okay, well, we are going to go this far, assuming we get finance, and unconditionally we're going to here, so to this top line. So you can see this huge gap between now and 2030. And in fact, a much larger gap to 1.5 degrees. And of course, many of us here are from developing countries. So the question is, who is responsible? Should we be doing something about that? But of course, you know, we don't have this big historical responsibility. But the truth is that we don't have a choice. We all have to do this together. And certainly more should be borne by those most responsible and most capable. But when you look at what are a fair share for countries, and again, this is in terms of South Africa, but if you look at the Climate Action Tracker, you can see for your own country, the actual policies and how they align with our actual global targets. South Africa is at the top of our target range by 2030, not adequate. And at the bottom, it is, it's inadequate, but it's not highly insufficient. And we're just kind of falling within that range. But the question is, what are we actually doing? And that's what these policies and actions are. And so what we're seeing is that action is not meeting our rhetoric. So can we fix it? Absolutely. We do have climate change locked in, but we can plan for this, and we can undertake mitigation actions in the near term that will make a huge difference, and of course adaptation actions. We have the technology to replace our fossil fuels for energy. We know how to do more productive agriculture, and we know how to, we can restore our ailing ecosystems, which are essentially the lifeblood of all of our civilizations. But how we do it is the big question, right? If we do it too slowly, will that be adequate? If we do it too fast, what are the impacts? Who benefits from it is just as important as sort of how it's done, because there may be losers in this. And if we follow the current development paradigm, obviously we're going to leave people behind. So that is just not adequate. We need to think about where there are potential negative impacts. And we need to plan for justice, for including people in this transition. And I think it's important to say that it's urgent that it happens now. It would have been better yesterday. This is a little bit of a monstrous diagram, but what it's trying to say is, if we look at our past conditions, this optimal pathway to a climate resilient, low carbon future, we've already missed that, right? We've missed the boat for that because we have a certain amount locked in. But what we do now could get us still to a higher, a more resilient future. Or if we fail to do it, we can go down. And these little arrows, lightning bolts, are shocks. We're going to experience climate shocks. We're all of us have experienced them in different ways. Different countries have seen them. They're going to keep coming. And that sort of thing will make the planning more difficult. So the sooner we do the action, the better off we are. And there are limits to adaptation, to how much we can adapt to it. Even very effective adaptation can't prevent all the losses and damage, and above 1.5 degrees, some natural solutions don't work. And by 2 degrees, it'll be challenging to farm multiple staple crops in many current growing areas, which is obviously a major concern. So one of the first things we can think of doing is changing the footprint of food and land use, which means improving agricultural yields. It means actually providing support for the sort of the rural economies, and helping to restore the natural systems that they're dependent on, making the sort of sequestration in the soil feasible, and embedding that action at a policy level. And so this link here is a tool that we've developed to help with sort of the food forward planning and integrating it into our nationally determined contributions. But obviously the other elephant in the room, and where a lot of the green technologies come in, is into the energy system. And again, there's good news here. Making the transition rapidly is by and large, a very positive thing. So you can see that, the impact, the footprint on ecosystems and biodiversity, if we transition to renewable energy and sustainable energy systems, is much lower. We do have much less mining. In fact, for energy, it's 95% less mining because a large portion of that is for fossil fuels that are then burned and not reused, whereas there is potential for reuse in energy. But that doesn't mean that there are less jobs overall in the economy, which is a major concern for us in South Africa. In fact, there are many more jobs to be had as we make this transition. And of course, there's lots of other benefits. We'll have less pollution of the air, less pollution of the water, less consumption of water, which for water scarce countries is very important. And most importantly, we have less land degraded by climate change. And that's a lot of work that we need to do to do this. And we, sort of the technologies are there and they exist, but how we roll them out is important. If we are not strategic about how they're rolled out, if we don't think about conflicts and where we put them and their footprint of them, then it can have major impacts. And of course, we need to undertake that restoration of nature alongside it. And there, of course, are risks as well. So, for instance, if we were to use biomass as a significant portion of our energy system, we would need significantly more area devoted to that. But we can mitigate that risk by reducing the biomass area and shifting bioenergy to other renewable sources. And similarly, we're likely to have more water use if we're doing biomass in particular. But again, by shifting to other alternatives, we can address that. And this productive use of spacing is very important. The footprint of wind may be at first blush very large, but actually you can farm amongst that. In fact, you can farm amongst PV, photovoltaics, and increase your yields because of the shading impacts. So that can be a very positive outcome. And then, of course, the impacts on our rivers, if we use lots of dams, can be problematic in terms of biodiversity and water flow. So we have to be very strategic about where we put them. But the most important thing to think about, as we're doing this work, as we're growing into it, is the element of justice. It's how do we make sure that this new process of development that we're wanting to do, integration of green technologies and new ways of working, how do we make sure that it benefits those who are most at risk and those who've been left behind in the current sort of inequitable system? And that really is something that we're all working on, but it's going to be a very strong role for the youth, right? This is I think we're all aware of Greta's thing back in, nearly 10 years ago now, and how she brought youth into the conversation. And the youth has been very, very active subsequently. We have many youth activists in our own countries that are really pushing this, which is not to say that they weren't before, but now they are being centered in the conversation. And that is a key opportunity for us because youths typically really understand the issues of rights and risk, and without having to have it done to them. They really have a very strong sense of justice and have the ability to envision the future that we need, whereas some of us potentially more jaded or embedded in the systems may find that difficult. So this kind of youth process of building the support structures to enable the transition, engaging those transition opportunities, but with open eyes about the risks and about the inequities there, and holding power accountable, thinking about the promises that are coming out of private sector companies and out of our politicians and out of our local councillors, and holding them accountable, making sure they deliver on them is key. But we must, as a point of departure, realize that the development that we all so urgently need must center climate resilience and it must center equity. If we don't have those two things, any gains we have are really at risk of loss, of being overturned, particularly if we don't address climate impacts. We have infrastructural risks, we have social risks, all sorts of developmental gains could be overturned. And I guess the point here is I could go very much into the technical elements of the technologies, and I'm sure you're going to explore those, but you're also going to explore the kind of how you make things happen. And I think it's important to say that in the current systems, under the current regime of climate change, those who are least responsible for it are going to suffer the most. And obviously that is a key equity issue. It's a developmental issue. And there are lots of other stresses that at-risk populations are likely to be exposed to, and those just amplify the impacts. Our continued destruction of habitat, which provides the air and the water and the pollinators and all of those kind of ecosystem services on which our food systems and our entire livelihoods depend, is a big risk. But what's also important to know is that as climate change gets more significant, we run risks of passing tipping points where things like tropical jungles may suddenly start converting into savannas and releasing large amounts of carbon dioxide. In fact, we're already seeing in the Arctic Circle large amounts of methane released. Those sorts of tipping points have to be avoided urgently, which means acting now. And we have to not just think about incremental change, but transformative change. We need to be doing things across the board at really rethinking how we do everything. And it's not like there is a threshold beyond which everything is lost. Every little bit counts. Every increment that we do now makes a huge difference in the future. And there are options that we can do, options to adapt to those futures. But if we don't build up to them now, we're not going to achieve them. So we both need to do mitigation and adaptation. And this is sort of all shoulders to the wheel. Everybody has to do it. We've been doing lots of work with youth over the last few years, really trying to empower them to engage with this. And I'd urge you in your discussions over the next few days to really think about how do you leverage those massive changes. Okay, I think that's me. I'm happy to hand over to the others, and I assume there's going to be some questions at a later date.
All right, thanks, James. That's much appreciated. Yes, no, guys, if you do have questions, please do post it in the chat. Definitely, James will be able to respond to those. So yes, please do post questions if you have any. Thank you, James. That was very interesting. It's always scary when you see a graph and you realize that we're on the wrong side of the bars that you can see in the lines. It just makes us realize how close are we to the tipping point. It's a bit scary, guys, to be honest. But if we do our part, and we all do our part, we've got a chance still. But the days and time it's moving, so it can definitely run out. And if it goes past, who knows what's going to happen, guys. There's only one planet we've got. We don't have another one to go to. So, but thank you so much, James. That was really an eye-opener and much appreciated. So next up is our postdoctoral research fellow at the University of Witwatersrand. That's Dr. Ariel Prinsloo. So it's always great to have a fellow academic coming to join us today. So Dr. Prinsloo, you're most welcome to share your screen and of course then to continue and share your presentation as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think I'll just wait. Is my screen visible? I'm not quite sure. It said it
yes,
was.
no, perfect.
It's visible?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if it's on kind of the presenter view. Is that, I'm not quite sure what you're seeing.
Well, we actually just seen you. Your camera is on.
Okay. Sorry, bear with me, please. One sec, and then let's go there. Okay, I shall just try to see if that works. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen? Still not. Let me see.
Nope. Still just seeing you. Okay, wait, there we go. Yes, great stuff. We must just run it in presentation mode. I think you'll do that. Okay, there we go. Go for it.
Is it showing the one with the slide or next slide, or is it the full screen?
No, it's showing your presenter view rather than the other one.
I'm so sorry.
Yes. So just click on display settings. on the top left-hand side, display settings, and then just select, yes, the very first option.
Okay.
There
Are
we
we
go.
there?
Perfect.
Okay.
Floor is yours, Doc.
Thank you for your patience and greetings, everybody. So yes, my name is Dr. Ariel Prinsloo. I'm a postdoc and lecturer from the University of the Witwatersrand. And today I'm really speaking to, yes, empowering the youth around green growth. And so first, I just want to just position ourselves of what is my role in empowering the youth. And today, what I really want to speak about is the 3 tools that I have been privileged to be involved with in their development and their continued use around how we empowering youth, what information we're giving. And so this really stems from the work that I did at WWF. So lovely to also see a previous colleague, James, and all the work. It's really also inspiring to hear the work that he has done and continues to do again after so long. And sort of going back to the work that I had been a part of as a Green Careers Research Officer at WWF, and then more onto the current role that I am part of as a lecturer and course coordinator for a course on climate change. It's called Climate Change in Me, and I'll get more into that. And then just briefly around the role that I play as a secretary for the International Society of Biometeorology and the Student and New Professionals group. So where this really stems from and what my teaching and what my role in these toolkits and tools that I've developed is in asking and creating the opportunity for the youth to find their why. This is my philosophy that I am potentially imposing on other people, but I just think it's important to understand your motivation and why you're here, what you're doing, and this is both in climate change or any environmental field. That's why we're here. And this has come from Eric Thompson, the hip hop preacher, and really just always asking yourself why you're here, what is your motivation in all of this? And this is where all these tools have really stemmed from. So the first that I was privileged to be a part of was the Green Careers Guide. This particular guide was in development over a 10-year period. I was lucky to join in the last 3 years of its development and really bring it to its conclusion in what it is today, which is an interactive tool that is hosting 124 green careers that are scarce skills and needed skills in the environmental space in South Africa. And it ranges from different, I guess, spaces around conservation, which are more obvious spaces where one could look for a green career, to ones that are less obvious, like city spaces, mining in particular, which can be quite controversial, but definitely needed as we engage in a green career and what this could look like. And so within these spaces, it ranges from different levels of skills, from more technical skills as sort of in fishing communities, guiding sustainable fishing practices, to more, I guess, high level engineering practices that different youth can engage in. Yes. And from this, also developing particular cards and I guess resources that youth could use, but also trying to encompass a broad scale of individuals, from teachers to even parents, to try guide the youth on where they want to be in a green space. It is a very big space, as James had pointed to. There is a lot to do and a lot that you could have to think about to see where you could position yourself. And from this, we've developed green career cards, green career toolkits that really help to guide the youth and, like I said, other individuals on the necessary information they could need as they potentially enter these careers. And even from this sort of designing bigger projects like this Green Careers banner, and luckily I'm in touch with some of my colleagues from WWF who have been sponsoring this and who have gotten these resources out, which is, I argue, one of the most important things, is to get information out, to get the tool out so that particular individuals can use them. Right, and then a second tool, which I'm particularly positioned in now and something I'm very passionate about, is a university-wide course that is run at the University of Wits, which is called Climate Change and Me. This course is a very big course. It is offered to all first years across all faculties at Wits. It is, or generally registers over 6,000 students, so it's a very big course to run. And this course had started during COVID and eventually was, or the process for designing this course was started during COVID as a way to help students engage with the online platform that we use. We use a platform called Ulwazi, and it was a month-long process to try, we run the course over a month to try engage students with the online process while using climate change as a means to help part of this course. And so since it's evolved, I've been running this course for the last 3 years, and it's generally run as part of our Gateway to Success program, which is an orientation program for all first years. But even that, it has transitioned into something that is a 2-week course to something that is now a year-long course. And this course, along with climate change knowledge, is about assisting students in transitioning from high school learning to university learning. So it introduces the topic of climate change, really basic understanding, which most students do know, but also introducing the technical aspects that when you're dealing with students who are coming from a variety of backgrounds, it's really important to cover the basics so that students know and can easily understand what is happening and how it will be changing. And this course is really important for also engaging with critical thinking, and it is also an introduction to the needed academic skills that are a part of the university space. And so this is the layout of our course, which is, just to give you a bit of a brief overview of it, is that it really engages in modules around what climate change is in this Gateway to Success program, which is in the first 2 weeks before term starts, to then during the year, students have modules that they can complete. I forgot to mention, this course is not a graded course, but it is an official accredited short course offered at Wits. And so with this course, my particular department of academic affairs really wanted to make this a course that is open and accessible and give students the time to really engage with the concept of climate change without there being pressure of needing to get marks for it, whether they need to pass this course while completing their courses for their first degree, and really take that pressure away so that they can independently look at this course. I mean, I say independently, but we still provide guidance. We have tutors and I think 125 writing fellows that help them engage with the subject matter, engage with starting to put their ideas onto paper once they've engaged with this information. We share up-to-date climate change news and developments. For example, what are the outcomes out of COP that happen yearly or annually, and what this means, and really get them to engage with, so these are the outcomes, what does this mean for you as a young person? For example, the latest COP29 around finances, if you're a student who is studying English literature or maybe you're studying art, what does it mean for you? Do you even care about finance when it has nothing to do with your space, and why should you care? And so that sort of constant engagement has really helped students just take a break outside of their degrees to understand that they fit within a broader system. So the course is really broken down into understanding the past and future of climate change, which is really cool. And while it's difficult to translate how models are being, like the modeling of climate change and what that means for South Africa, what that means for water resources, how heat will be distributed, etc. It's tricky to relay, but we really try to make it very simplified, because that's what this comes down to. Like, especially with the youth coming from all different backgrounds, we need to make it very accessible. And so that's what we try to do in this course. And then, of course, bringing in contextual South African climate change happenings. And then the second module looks at where a particular student will fit around international conversations around the IPCC and COP, and then more around climate change activism, which James mentioned, but this is really about looking at like South African activists, as James said, and where students could fit in the space. And then finally ending with climate change across disciplines of that, because you're dealing with students who are in particular spaces, how do they relate to each other? How do they take let's say climate change information into something that is in their field, like actuarial science? When you're studying for a degree, you don't necessarily think about where you'll fit, but how you're thinking about it in the future will matter. And so that's what we try to equip students with. And the two key roles in this course, which I stand by in its development, is giving students the space to figure out where they stand in the climate change crisis, giving them the time, like I said, to engage with this information, to start questioning. I will admit I thrive on a bit of chaos and ask very controversial questions that I want to almost upset a few people. I say that, but not really. It's really just to get students to critically think about the issues, because sometimes at how I pitch the course or how I've created it, can be quite vague. But if students are thinking about it within their particular context, it becomes a lot more real, and hopefully it is something that they can bring with them wherever they are. And then also importantly, to give them a voice to start thinking about this climate change crisis. And we do this predominantly through a blog writing assignment. I'm particularly proud of this blog assignment, and we generally host a competition of the best blogs, so they get feedback and then they have a chance to resubmit it or create a whole new blog. And so I'll share some of the blogs that have come out of this process, and just really interesting to see how the young people are starting to think about and starting to conceptualize within themselves and put it onto paper what they're thinking about. So particularly interesting one was the Act Now or Prepare to Meet Your Maker, which is dealing about cultural issues of meat eaters within a generation, and how they are trying to change that as the first vegan in their family, to more contextual issues like finding your sea legs in Soweto, to then being an adult and being this young person straight out of high school and what it means to be an adult in this new space dealing with climate change, and then to more political aspects around who is to blame for these impacts. Like James said, like the people who are not really the cause of these issues will be the most affected. People who don't have a say in this climate change crisis will most likely be affected. And so this course is really something I'm proud of, to help give young people the voice to start doing these things. And what it has created is these environmental clubs within the WITS environment, with students trying to look at the water security of it, or the recycling system. So it's starting to get them to think within a space that hopefully myself as the coordinator and other people within the university can start helping them move and create action from what they're learning. And then just to briefly mention the International Society of Biometeorology Student and New Professionals. So if you're not familiar, biometeorology is this very new space, but it's been around for quite a while actually, but it's something that's becoming more and more prevalent. And biometeorology essentially looks at the link between climate, humans, animals and plants, and this can range from looking at the early timings of spring to seeing how animals are, it's actually really fascinating, but how animals are physiologically changing and moving as they move across the equator, and how they're being affected as things become more hot, to humans that are looking at thermal comfort and heat stress and urban spaces that are aiding or being more detrimental to these spaces, and what it means for the human physiology around heat. And so this particular Student and New Professionals group is really about aiding networking among young people internationally, not just within the subjects of biometrology, because most research doesn't actually, you don't actually think it is part of biometrology, but it is, and it's just about joining a part of the network so that you're a part of the conversation, even if you don't think you are. Hope that makes sense. And then also, more importantly, about these conversations around Global South and Global North. There have been debates around the Global South and Global North forever, but it's really about this knowledge building that is happening in the Global South, in Southern Africa, parts of Africa that are not being extended to the Global North, and actually within research spaces not being considered important, considering that Southern Africa and Africa will be the most affected by climate change. I believe that Southern Africa is set to experience 3 times the rate of global warming. I don't quote me on that. That's just something I read earlier. But anyway, and also through this professionals group of creating opportunities through webinar series around information sharing, young professional concerns, and I'll get onto that a little bit like right now, and then workshops for sharing the tools other young people are using in that space. And so just before I wrap up, or this is my wrap up kind of, is that these tools have been excellent to use in their distribution. I think many people have benefit from it, but as a millennial myself, I tend to drift towards instant gratification. And so when you have a course that is being offered to over 6,000 students and only 3,000 actually complete it, you think, oh no, we're not getting anywhere. But to just keep in mind that the small wins are still wins. And so some of the challenges to consider in moving forward with these tools is that is to keep youth motivated in an anxiety-inducing world, and that these are very big, complex challenges. And I've experienced this in my own course, where students now have the tool, they feel capable, they feel that they've used their voice, but they still don't know if they're making any concrete change. And so helping the youth keep motivated in this is quite a challenge. And so we try to show them the small wins that are happening globally. I'm not quite sure if it's effective, but I think it does help a little bit. And then creating flexible and more up-to-date tools, because the world is consistently changing, to address knowledge and access gaps that are still prevalent. This particular course is run really at WITS, but what about other spaces, and what does that look like, and how we can be flexible about that? And then finally, using AI technology to our advantage. Within the academic space, AI has really become sort of the monster in the room, and something that academics tend to be so against. Well, I'm generalizing here, maybe not all the time, but something that can be used and to teach the youth, and I'm sure they are actually, most young people who have been engaging AI already know how to use it effectively, but to be part of that change, to use AI and technology to our advantage in progressing actions towards climate change. Okay, thank you. And yes, any questions are welcome.
All right, thanks, Doc Prinsloo, much appreciated. Yes, there are some questions popping up in the chat, but I think what's important is, guys, we will deal with some questions once the next presenter's done. So we are documenting some of the questions that we can engage with our speakers, because I think that's quite important. The fact that we've got them here, guys, we can actually ask them some questions as well. So, but do check the chat. I do see there's quite a lot of engagement there that's happening. I see Clifford, Beloy, thank you. I love your questions that you're sending through, some really thought-provoking questions. All right, without further ado, let's continue with the process. And the next speaker, which is a research and policy officer, Ms. Molehi Mafitra, and really interested to hear from your side, especially with policy. You always hear about policy, so let's give Molehi an opportunity to present. So over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you please just confirm if you can hear me?
Loud and clear, and we can see you.
Okay, lovely. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the quote, power corrupts and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. That's what I like I like to keep in mind. But I also do think whenever we're dealing with youth, I much appreciate making it more of a conversation. It's an honor to be on this platform today. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you for your hard work as the ADVOC team. And luckily for me, my colleagues actually, James Reeler and Ariel Prinsloo, have already laid out the technical elements of all of this. So I can speak to you about the fun stuff. So my name is Mudiye Mafantire. I'm a Research and Policy Officer at the Climate Action Network South Africa. And really what I am is a youth advocate. I'm interested in sustainable development. I'm interested in the just transition and climate action. And my main message for you today is that the pathway to sustainability is not straight at all. I mean, all of the pathways, they're simply not straight. I'm coming to you live today from the third world. I'm from Maseru, Lesotho, and so I'll be sharing a bit of my story to provide more context. I registered my sustainable homeware business with my business partner when we were 19 years old. And what we wanted to do was to really participate ethically in the textile industry, noting that the textile industry is one of the biggest polluters in the world, and they come second to the aviation industry in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. So it's deeply problematic and maybe something that we don't think about, like what is in our textiles. And what are textiles really? Because it's beyond just clothes. We're speaking about all sorts of fabrics. But my business really took off during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I really appreciated the previous mention of the importance of virtual platforms, because this was possible. It was possible for us to launch a sustainable homeware business, to establish a very legitimate marketplace in the global north during a time in which people could not necessarily meet one-on-one or go to shops because of virtual platforms. And we were able to really drive sustainable development because of virtual platforms. And so I don't at all neglect or maybe disrespect the fact that we are having this conversation online. I know that there are many people who are fans of in-person engagements, but I do understand and believe in the power of really connecting online. So as a youth advocate, really, I pivoted my career. And that is why I like to mention that the pathway to sustainability is not straight. I went from starting as a person working in the green economy, and this was for 5 years, to then working as an intern at SACAN. And that is where I was fully thrown into the world of the just transition. That was a whirlwind of an experience. I remember the first time that I met James and I met colleagues from the Presidential Climate Commission. I felt so overwhelmed as an intern in a new space. However, my deep belief is that you are never entirely unqualified to be in any space, and that if you equip yourself with the right tools, that you could be, in fact, an expert in your field. And I went from being somebody who didn't quite understand what we were talking about in 2022 about the energy transition to, in 2024, being the contact point for the local Conference of Youth South Africa, where we produced the first national youth position on the just transition. And the statement was engaged by the Presidential Climate Commission. It was also handed over formally to the head of the Just Energy Transition Project Management Unit in January earlier this year. And so really, I want to elaborate on the whole Alcoy situation, but I wanted to position myself first so that you understand where I'm coming from and that hopefully you can use this to empower yourselves moving forward. When I started with Alcoy, so this is the local Conference of Youth. It is held under the umbrella of YOUNGO, which is the official children and youth constituency to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So when you think about youth that are interested in climate change and really beyond having the information, it's so important for us to act, right? And previous speakers have already mentioned this, that you need to do something. But how exactly can you do something? Really what you can do is to join a youth constituency. That is how I upskilled myself. So I had existing knowledge of sustainable development and knew that I needed to pivot into the energy space and knew that I needed to understand the policy space further. And beyond just the workplace, which is somewhere that you are learning in the moment, on the go, there's really the work that you need to do by yourself after 9 to 5, right? So you cannot rely 100% on your workplace to equip you with these skills. You need to put in the extra effort. So I joined YOUNGO and I joined different various working groups. And that is where I fully became aware of the importance of climate diplomacy. Because I'm not sure how many of you, off the top of your heads, you know exactly what the UN Climate Change Conference is about, and you understand all of the articles of the Paris Agreement and the relevance of climate diplomacy in these conversations. But that's something that you, in my experience, you never quite stop learning, because it's a different article of the Paris Agreement that becomes more and more relevant over time. I mean, at some point, Article 6 was a bit niche, and last year, because of the focus on climate finance, Article 6 and the carbon markets were very much, the topic of the month during COP. And so I would encourage you to please join a youth constituency at a global level. Join a youth constituency at a local level. There are so many different NGOs, there are CBOs, which are community-based organizations, that you could really lend yourself to. And that relationship works both ways. I know that there are some people who have challenges with volunteering, and we can definitely speak about the fact that it is expensive to work without a salary. And that is what you do when you volunteer. You lend your services in hope that the efforts that you are contributing will help the world in one way or another. But that is how you build your repertoire of skills, because there's a very large chance that you graduate from university with your very esteemed degree, and without the actual work experience, without the know-how of actually engaging in whichever field it is that you're specializing in. It could be climate policy, it could be environmental impact assessment. Your CV might not be that impressive at the end of the day. And so I encourage you to take the time to consider in which ways you can build your skills outside of the academic space, not neglecting at all the importance of the academic space. I am somebody who is quite passionate about learning and sharing knowledge. So going back to my own personal story, I am also a member of the African Union Youth Reference Committee 2023/2024, still active in 2025 as the youth envoy to the African Union's chairperson, has yet to be, the new one has yet to be appointed. And through these engagements, I've really been able to, first you find out about policymakers and systematically how to enact change. But it's another thing to, in fact, deal with policymakers in person, right? So to actually be involved in the process of changing a policy. And working and being part of the African Union Youth Reference Committee has exposed me to this. And again, on the importance of virtual platforms, I found out about this opportunity online, and I applied, and I took a big bet on myself. And that's another important point. Please don't count yourselves out at all. I know that there are many youth who will say to me that they feel intimidated by other people's LinkedIn profiles, and that they might be, unqualified for certain posts or positions, and that is not the case. Please don't count yourself out. Count yourself in, rather. So I applied for this opportunity, and it's been an incredible process of not only engaging with, for example, the German Foreign Office, or actually being given a guided tour of the parliament in Vienna, which is an important place where policy is discussed. But it is about finding out as a person, as a researcher, what is really your niche, right? You really do need to pick one quite early, I would suggest. But even if you're unable to, just focus on a few topics. So beyond the African Union Youth Reference Committee, and I mentioned the African Union Youth Reference Committee because I do think that this is a global summit, right? We're speaking beyond the South African context. And that is also why I mentioned the fact that I'm from Lesotho and that I'm speaking to you right now from Lesotho, because I want us to understand the importance of contextualizing our goals and our ambitions for climate action. It's so crucial to think beyond just South Africa, although you might be in South Africa. For me, it's crucial to think beyond being in Lesotho, although I'm in Lesotho. We are all in some way or another connected. And the thing that really binds us together, whether we like it or not, are the different policies that our governments have agreed to, the agreements that they've signed on, the treaties that they've endorsed, etc., etc. And that is the role of policy. And I can appreciate that more and more, the more that I grow in this role. Giving a very practical example, I mentioned before that last year I was involved in the local conference of youth South Africa, in that we produced the National Youth Position on Leaders Transition. What I would like to do is to explain more about that process. So I understand that part of this theme includes green technologies, and I'd like to highlight that one of our themes was African youth perspectives on STEM. This is something that we need to explore more and more of, and beyond just in the urban context. And understanding that, we held a workshop in which we had dedicated 50% of the seats to youth from peri-urban and rural schools. So we had communicated with them, and these are schools in Gauteng. So now we're talking about people who on a regular basis might not necessarily be exposed to topics of climate action. I mean, do they understand fully the importance of the NCQG, which is the new collective quantified goal on climate finance? Not necessarily, but we need to bring people into the conversation so that this can really be African youth perspectives on STEM. And that is what we did during our conference. We're very proud to have facilitated the participation via transport support and also data support for people who needed to join online as we were streaming with the Mail and Guardian, in order to really engage as many different youth as we could. And throughout the day, what we did was workshop a handbook on African youth positions on climate action. And this is supposed to be more of a how-to guide. I'm not going to say too much about this because we are hoping to roll out this handbook, and you might be the first ones to find out about the call to abstracts that is soon to come. But I mention this because I want to make it clear to you that the little actions that you might take, the volunteering that you might do for organizations or initiatives such as Alcoy, they do count in the broader scheme of things. Because it is so heartwarming to hear from people that don't normally have access to either internet or to resources, that the fact that we went out of our way to make sure that they were in those rooms has actually impacted the way that they view the world. It's made a change within them, that they are now even considering studying STEM. And not necessarily, before that may have not been something that they wanted to do. So giving people hope through the work that I do is something that makes me feel deeply fulfilled. And I hope that for you as an audience today, that you're also able to think about that beyond the technical elements. It's a human condition, right? It's a human connection that matters. Thank you so much. I think that is about what I can say.
All right, thank you so much. I do see some hands of applause and lots of hearts popping up. So clearly the audience really enjoyed what you were saying, and it's really coming from your heart as well. Just to tell people, hey, there is opportunities out there, but you really need to put the ball back in the court, if in a sense, if you're playing tennis, that is. All right. So as we promised, we're looking at the questions that were coming through in the chat, and since we've got the speakers here with us, there we go. I see the questions have come through. Maybe here we go. Thank you, Nafma. So there we go. So James, there were quite a number of questions. I see you have been answering them as well. Just to run through some of the questions, guys, just in case you maybe didn't see the chat, or if you're on the YouTube channel, you wouldn't be able to see what's happening in terms of the chats and teams. How does green technology reduce pollution? So that question is directed at you, James.
Yeah, okay, so as I said, green technology is a very sort of all-encompassing phrase, and there are shades of green, perhaps. The idea of the sort of technologies reducing pollution that we're talking about here is a lot of the shift in energy technologies to renewables. So, for instance, wind or photovoltaic solar, or even concentrated solar, tends to have one-off impacts when you're doing the mining and the making of the facility, and then will run for 20 years without any emissions. And so if you just look at this sort of resource usage for those, it's significantly lower. And of course, in the South African context, and in many places that are less dependent on coal than South Africa, there are huge sort of impacts in terms of water quality from the mining of coal and the preparation of coal, and from the combustion. But more broadly of fossil fuels, we get nitrous oxides, which are very bad for human health, and particulate matter. So a shift to those really makes a huge difference in even the near term, but particularly in the long term as the footprint gradually decreases and you're producing our technologies using this greener technology. Shall I jump into the next question there, David, which is also
yes, go for it, James. Yeah. Yep, no problem.
Supporting better policy making. So Moriahi has already mentioned, that this is something that binds us all together and that it's something that she has been engaged in, that we're engaged in. Really, as I said, policy making should be an evidence-based process. You look at what are the futures, what are the needs, and what are the risks, and you try and balance those out to come to a coherent policy that supports what you're trying to get to. A lot of the time, however, there's a lot of obfuscation, and particularly at this moment where we have a lot of what are called alternate truths, perhaps, it can be quite hard to get to the truth. And that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of research papers supporting sort of direct into the policy space. But for us as citizens, supporting better policy making really is about raising our voices and getting involved. South African government is very good. Not all governments are as good about doing consultative processes when they're doing their policy making, but to some extent, there is always a space in which you can make your voice heard and raised to the policymakers, and you can reach them, even if it's very local, if you're looking at your kind of municipality. So, I think there's a process about evidence, there's a consideration for direct engagement. And then there is always, and this is a thing that people don't think about as part of the policy process, but actually ensuring the implementation is part of policy, right? Holding people responsible for the outcomes that the policy is supposed to get to is as much of the process, a part of the process as policy making, as is the conceptualizing of it.
All right, super. Thanks, James. Much appreciated. So there we go. So the next two questions then is going to be for Ariel, Dr. Prinsloo. The impact of reducing meat consumption. That's quite an interesting view. And then the second question will be role youth can play in knowledge building in the global south. Over to you, Ariel.
Thank you. I will attempt to answer the third question around the impacts of reducing meat consumption. Maybe James is also willing to step in there, because I guess this is a very controversial debate, right? All right. So reducing meat consumption, of course, has impacts on greenhouse gas emissions and needs for land use, and it has all these wonderful things, but also the consumption of meat, we know as South Africans, is very culturally based. It's very, some people, will not feel that their plate is complete without a piece of meat on it. And so taking away meat consumption, what does that mean culturally? I can't answer that. What does it mean to have to, impose is not the best word, but impose these meat alternatives, even meat alternatives, and the use of soy can be very controversial. Not controversial, but there's quite a few debates ranging about it also in terms of land use and what is required for these alternatives. Remember, it's a very tricky, yes, I think Innocentia is Innocent might be able to contribute to that. I'd love that if you want to, and James. But I think there's quite a debate around it. I don't think we can just say no to meat. There are really more to this debate than needed. Maybe James, you can go first, and then Innocent. David, you can guide us.
Just quickly. I think so. The impact of reducing beef consumption is the single biggest sort of lifestyle change that you can make in terms of your diet, right? Which is not to say that you have to stop eating meat. Nobody's going to make that choice for you, but nobody's going to make any of these choices for you. The point is that if you reduce your consumption of meat, or those of us who are privileged to have a large consumption of meat were to reduce it and make space for those who can't, that would make a significant difference. But meat is not meat as well. Chicken has a much lower footprint than beef, and so does pork. And so just shifting what you eat also makes a huge difference. So certainly you can bear that in mind in terms of your lifestyle choices.
For sure.
All right. Yep. No problem. Can I let Innocent maybe open his mic so he can ask the question?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, there you go. Go for it, Innocent. You can just unmute yourself and then you can ask your question. Yes, it's usually a tricky thing with Teams, especially when you join and it's muted by default and then you try to unmute. You can try again, Innocent. Can you unmute? If you can't, just please use the chat then. You can just post your question there and we'll definitely have a look at it. I hope he's hearing me. I'm not too sure. Okay, so let's then just continue then with the next question, the role that youth can play in knowledge building in the Global South area.
Right, yes. So from my stance, I think that the knowledge building in the Global South is really about getting the information and the research and work that we're doing into the world, whether this is through published or publications, whether it's through sort of news articles or radio interviews or even videos from the youth stating this is what is happening in the Global South. I feel that particularly within the research spaces that I'm in, that Global North research can tend to neglect the lived experience of the Global South. So the role the youth can play in this is really about getting information out there. And so if they're not at a stage to publish, it's really about working with other individuals and groups and in your communities to create videos, TikTok has been in the news late, but maybe like Instagram or other online media platforms, right? We're talking about a digital age to then work as the youth together to get information about lived experiences out there into the world. Yeah, I think in masses would be decent. Yeah. Hope that answers the question.
Right. Yeah, I hope so. We'll keep checking the chat and seeing if it comes through. Then there's two questions from Molehi. How can communities enhance climate resilience while ensuring equity for marginalized populations and jobs for unemployed youth affected by climate change? Oh, that seems like quite a loaded question.
It is a very loaded question. I'll try my best to answer, but it is, I think, a very appropriate question for me because SACAN does have a CBO working group. So this is a community-based organizations working group composed of leaders of community-based organizations from across the country. And so on a regular basis, they are updating us as a membership on their different activities. And the best ways that I think communities can build resilience is to really tune into each other. You'll often find that in certain places, it feels as though, say that there's right now a storm and everyone is complaining about the lack of drainage. So now there's a need for someone to start a new thing about climate change and adjusting to disaster risk management. However, there are already existing community-based organizations that are doing that work. So I would advise you to find your community-based leaders in your area who are doing this work and to support them so that you can rather build something together rather than starting something new. I hope that makes sense. And then in terms of how will this include marginalized populations? So when we're speaking about civil society, there's a little bit of a dichotomy here. So we have your registered non-governmental organizations and then your community-based organizations that almost work entirely on the ground and not necessarily so much in the technical side like NGOs do, although there are CBOs that do both. So where the inclusion of marginalized communities is concerned, community-based organizations are entirely for the people. They are for the people on the ground. They are looking towards helping and assisting the most disadvantaged members of our societies. Okay, and then the third part of this question, and jobs for unemployed youth affected by climate change. That is such a tough question in terms of how do we provide jobs for youth that are affected by climate change. This was perhaps one of our biggest criticisms when we produced the National Youth Position on the Just Transition, because the investment plan for the Just Transition in South Africa speaks to a lot of youth employment, but we don't see that necessarily being fleshed out. And so this is more of a question that we can collectively keep posing to the government and to policymakers, because this is the problem that we should be responding to immediately. I can appreciate that universities and other institutions of higher learning even secondary learning, are doing their best to equip youth with skills for the green economy, so that by the time that this funding really comes online and that these processes or even new institutions for hiring people in the green economy are official, that youth will actually know how to do that. So if we're speaking about green hydrogen, which is a very controversial topic, I would say, but it is a big sector of South Africa's just transition, that there'll be people who are prepared to work in the green hydrogen supply chain because they would have learned, as they're learning right now at university. But that is now, this is a process that is very long term. It's not immediate. Somebody who's learning about PTX, power to X, is not going to be able to make use of those skills necessarily right now, at least not that many people. But we hope that if the investment plan is executed in the way that it should be, that South Africa's green economy, specifically for green energy, and we can debate about green hydrogen being a green source of energy or not, that youth will have employment opportunities there. But the World Economic Forum recently published several reports that talked about the future of work, and the future of work is definitely green. And I would encourage you to continue to study, to equip yourself with skills to participate in this industry, because it is quite literally the future. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. And then the last question.
The last question, how do we volunteer? So this is a question that I get quite often. I am a big fan of emails, and I think that more youth need to, I'm surprised that they don't teach this in high school anymore, but they used to teach us how to send emails, professional letters, right? So letter writing was a big part of the curriculum. So you send a cold email to a company, and this is to say that you position yourself. So you say, my name is Gato, I'm studying a BCom honors in construction management. I have X, Y, and Z skills. During the December break, I'm looking to volunteer to build my repertoire and to have work experience. And then you attach your CV and you attach a motivation letter and you send it to them. If that doesn't work virtually, I'm also a big fan of just showing up in person, because I have the audacity to do that. So if you're also brave enough, please just arrive, go to the company that you would like to, and hand over your CV and your cover letter, because truly, what is the worst that can happen? And if you don't want to do it just by yourself and you're already at university, I think every university has some sort of a work experience or development department, and you should contact them to see how you can, through your university, get work experience. I know that there are a lot of programs that universities offer that are being supported by the presidential employment youth stimulus. So please check those out and contact universities for assistance. The same applies to NGOs. The cold email will also work, but more than anything, specifically where NGOs are concerned, websites will often have a volunteer with us section, in which case you can come and volunteer with us. Otherwise, just contact the pages, the social media pages directly. And now I'm putting SACAN's social media manager on blast, because she might receive a lot of DMs after this. But that's usually something that works. If nothing has been advertised, just try your best. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was really, really well done. Thank you to all the presenters for answering the questions. And of course, thank you for the audience for asking so many questions. And I see the chat is buzzing. So please do use the chat to post the questions as we go along in the program. Well, you might have heard it a bit earlier. We were referring to the youth or the youth voices who completed or participated in the MOOC that we hosted last year from September till November. And those students now, or we call them delegates, will be presenting to you. So we've randomly selected 5, and it was quite interesting how AI can actually generate a list and select the 5. So we thank Copilot for this one. And I'm going to call to the floor Charlene Singh, and she is representing the delegates' engagement later on today and tomorrow and the next day. So Charlene, you can put your camera on if you want, or share your presentation. You can unmute yourself and share a little bit about the MOOC course that you went through last year.
Good afternoon, honourable delegates. As distinguished organizers and fellow colleagues. My name is Charlene Singh. I am a third, sorry, I'm just trying to share my presentation.
Yep, no problem. Just keep going, and I'll let you know as soon as I see it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's coming up. And there we go.
Yes, I am a third-year student at UNISA with my majors in law and psychology. I joined the Model UN because I wanted to move beyond textbooks and theories to understand how diplomacy truly works and how global decisions are made. But this journey has been more about more than learning. It's been about discovering the power we hold as young leaders. Throughout my life, I've seen how decisions, whether at home, in communities, or on the global stage, can shape our futures. I'm here today because I believe in something simple but profound. If we want to see a better world, we must be willing to help create it. This summit is not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility to bring our voices, experiences, and ideas forward to shape a world that is more just, more sustainable, and more united. What first drew me to this program was the desire to understand the real mechanics of international governance. I wanted to know, how do policies that shape our world come to life? But what truly inspired me was how interactive and eye-opening this experience has been. The deep dive into the Sustainable Development Goals stood out to me. I knew these goals were important, but through this program, I realized that they are more than just ambitions. They are a blueprint for a better world, and each target reflects real people, real communities, and real struggles. One of the most powerful lessons I learned is that diplomacy is not just about politics, it's about people. It's about understanding diverse perspectives, finding common ground, and creating solutions that impact lives. This course made me realize that true change comes when we step beyond our comfort zones, we engage with others that challenge us, and work together despite our differences. This program wasn't just about absorbing information, it was about participating in the process. The learning materials, the videos, research articles, and case studies gave me a practical understanding of the UN's diplomatic processes. The interactive debates and peer discussions helped me see how different cultures and backgrounds shape the way we approach global problems. Listening to my fellow peers changed my own perspectives and made me think in ways I hadn't before. Collaborating with my peers reminded me that diplomacy is not just a concept, it's a living practice. We don't all think the same way, and that's precisely what makes us stronger when we work together. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to the experts from India, the DIAS, and UNISA for their dedication. Their guidance not only taught us the theory, but also showed us how to apply it in the real world. I believe this summit is not just it's not just a chance to share ideas, it's a place to build solutions. And I'm especially looking forward to engaging in thoughtful policy debates because it's through challenging conversations that we uncover stronger solutions, learning from diverse voices because every perspective adds depth to how we understand global issues. Strengthening my skills in advocacy and negotiation because being a leader means not just speaking, but listening and collaborating. Exploring real-world solutions because we need action and not just talk. The problems we face today, whether it's climate change, inequality, or human rights, require solutions that are both innovative and inclusive. Thank you to everyone who made this experience so impactful. The Model UN MOOC has been transformative, not just in teaching diplomacy, but in showing the power of young voices to shape a better world. This summit is more than a conclusion, it's a beginning. Every idea shared here holds a potential to drive real, lasting change. And I'm committed to working with all of you to turn those ideas into action. Let's collaborate, challenge assumptions, and use diplomacy to create a future where dialogue leads to real progress. Thank you so much. Back to you, David.
Thank you so much, Charlene. That was very well done. Very impressed. Thank you so much for that feedback that we've received. Okay, so we've got 4 more students that we need to get through. And I know we're a little bit behind schedule, so let's continue with the program. Fiesa Albera, you are next, dear sir. Yes, sir, you can just continue. If you want to share your screen or open your camera, not a problem. Fiesa, can you hear me? Your mic is open. All right, maybe you're having some technical problems, Fiesa, no problem. What we'll do is I'll come back to you at the end. Okay, so next then is Precious Lesupi. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, just gonna put my camera on for a bit and then try and share my screen. Just give me a second for that. Okay. There we go. Okay. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon especially to the delegates that have presented for us earlier on and those that are joining. I am Precious Mamutingo Lesupi. I am in my 2nd year of Bachelor of Sciences, Measuring in Mathematics and Computer Sciences. And with regards to the Global Voices Summit going on through the next 3 days, I will be representing the country, Mexico. You know, part of the bigger reason that I joined the MOOC is because I form part of a couple of marginalized groups, right? For example, I'm a queer person, and a lot of the policy making, and negotiations that happen in, you know, your big rooms like your UN headquarters, and when people are drawing up the Paris Climate Agreement, they exclude minority groups, right? And so I figured that the best way for me to enjoy access to things that other people enjoy in the world, and the best way for me to advocate for the equity that I so strive for, and the best way for me to be able to enjoy something like a green tech solution as an autistic person would be to be in those rooms where the decisions are made. And so part of the bigger reason that I joined this program is because it gave me an idea of, first of all, how to go about being in those big rooms, and what to say, and how to sort of diplomatically fight for your rights, right? And because for somebody that's, like I said, has been part of like a larger marginalized groups all the time, we're so used to, you know, going in the streets and protesting and trying to fight bureaucracy with active citizenship. And sometimes we need to fight bureaucracy with bureaucracy. And so that's a bigger part of what I learned. And I think one of my favorite things throughout the MOOC was putting ourselves in the shoes of other countries, right? And I know that we needed to pick the countries ourselves, but I would usually pick a country that has like the least like access to things, right? So for instance, like a country like Fiji Islands, for instance, right? And it was quite interesting because I was hoping that a lot of other people would also, you know, sort of gravitate towards countries that may be a bit tricky to research. And in that way, they might have an idea of what it feels like to be excluded when decisions are made about things that affect everybody else's life. And another big thing that I did learn, that I did enjoy learning, was the advocacy for sustainable development goals, because I properly am 100% behind it, and how the different UN structures would then go about, you know, pioneering that type of advocacy. And I think one of my biggest expectations for the summit, I know a lot of people talk about climate justice. I am curious to see the lens that they talk about climate justice from. I'm curious to see how people include minority groups in their solutions. For instance, if you're going to say, okay, let's maybe cut down on using certain types of technology for a bit, how do you then ensure that maybe somebody that's wheelchair bound that uses that type of technology gets included in that solution? So that's like the biggest thing I'm curious about. And I'm also really big on sustainable technology, because I do work in, you know, the tech industry. And yeah, I'm a lot more curious to see how people view the idea of sustainable tech, right? You know, back in the day, we used to view it in the terms of e-waste, like taking care of e-waste. But now people are starting to learn that things like ChatGPT, for instance, contribute so much to like carbon emissions and to, you know, climate action. So I'm curious to see the lens in which people approach the topic of sustainable technology as well. And yeah, I look forward to the rest of the summit. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Precious. Very brave of you as well, just to say, hey, the minorities need to be represented. And I actually really appreciate that. The fact you also refer to people with disabilities, that's very true. You hit the nail on the head. Yes, so definitely there's a lot more conversations that we need to be having. So, but thank you so much, Precious. That was very, very well done. All right, next in the queue is Sandiswe Boy. So please open your mic and you can put your camera on if you want, or open your presentation. Totally up to you, Sandiswe.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I don't have a presentation. I just wanted it to be more of an interactive kind of intro.
Perfect.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandisiwe Boy. I'm from East London in the Eastern Cape, and I'm a delegate in tomorrow's closed sessions for Thailand. I just completed my studies in a BCom economics at the University of UNISA. Just a little bit of an intro about myself. And I was a student mentor last year at the institution in order to help offer assistance and guidance to other students at the school as one of the students. As the university is an open distance learning institution, it can be very daunting. So I was more than happy to take on the role and become someone who the other students could speak to about some challenges and troubles that I myself have faced. As I entered my final year in my degree, it became clear to me the importance of what it is I am studying. The world and subsequently the economies in which we have lived in have changed and advanced significantly. And these advancements have yielded many beneficial outcomes, which have helped progress many industries across the board, from manufacturing, medicine, finance, the built environment, and so forth. Having now to take part in the summit where we get to tackle the cost and the biggest cost of this progress, which is climate change, is something I'm very appreciative of. It's an eye-opening and a very beneficial conversation and platform to have. And also having to talk about the transition to green technologies to help combat climate issues. So I joined the Model UN last year to expand my knowledge beyond the studies of my economics degree. I wanted to have a more holistic worldview of how organizations like the UN deal with global issues, such as the one we are addressing today. As an economics student, we are taught about the ways in which societies try to satisfy our unlimited needs and wants given our limited resources. So it fascinates me how countries from all over the world are able to come together and have a platform where they're able to voice and tackle the issue of having these limited resources. I'm sorry, I'm missing a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, no, loud and clear. Perfect, no problem.
All right. Where we're able to tackle the issue of our limited resources that we're all facing in such a diplomatic manner that brings about resolutions that if we were to have to deal with them alone, it would be very difficult to solve. Being a part of the MOOC training was quite interesting for me. I enjoyed the fact that it was set up in such a manner that you can get to go at it at your own pace, but you also have someone there to guide you through the course material. The tasks that we were given through each model of the course were very well coordinated, in my opinion, and they were very thought-provoking. The aspect of having peer reviews after our tasks and our essays and our conversations was very stimulating. It almost gave like a feel of a simulation where you would be in the General Assembly or at the caucuses where you have those debates between the fellow delegates at the UN where it takes place. And I also enjoyed how the MOOC helped show us how to form constructive views in the scope of global issues that the UN handles. The timing of my introduction to the Model UN honestly couldn't have come at a better time because I was in serious need of a society or a platform for me to expand my knowledge outside of my studies as a student at the University of South Africa, and to have a place where I could feel a challenge outside of just my schoolwork normally. So I decided to take part and jump into this co-curricula that the school decided to have for us. And honestly, it was the best decision that I'd ever made so far in my academic progress. In some ways, it helped me even with some school assignments and essays, not just to write purely as a scholar, but to also be able to put myself in the shoes of the world leaders out there when it comes to dissecting and analyzing information and delivering it in a more direct and productive manner. What I look forward to in this summit is engaging with all the brilliant intellectual minds that the organizers have so graciously gathered for us to both teach and bring awareness to us about what climate change means and the effects of it, and ways to combat it, and how we as the youth can participate in helping to combat the issue. And also just help me also be able to formulate some important questions after gaining the knowledge that I've just gotten from the first three speakers, because it's very stimulating being able to have these kinds of platforms and have these kinds of debates, because you're able to invoke thought-provoking ideas, questions, just curiosity about what it is you can do with what you have and where it is you could go with it. So being a part of the MOOC training and being a part of the summit has just been a very interesting and very thought-provoking opportunity, and I'm very grateful for it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Sanidisi. We're much appreciated. I liked your approach, very different, but very nice. Enjoyed it. But yes, so just remember, guys, delegates, you are starting today, not tomorrow. You're starting today. Remember your invites. You'll check your invites, 4:30. You guys will start your journey in the next part of the journey, campaign number 2. So just please check your emails. Hey, but remember, this is only for the delegates who completed the MOOC and applied successfully. Okay, next up is Willem. Hello. You can open your mic or your camera or your presentation. Over to you, Willem.
Hi, good day, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a privilege to be able to speak today. My name is Willem Low. I'm doing my master's in philosophy at UNISA with a special focus on philosophy of mind and artificial intelligence. Yeah, I don't want to repeat too much of what has already been said, but I do want to express my appreciation to the facilitators. Mr. Gupta was honestly inspiring in his knowledge and his ability to share it in such a clear way with such a diverse group. And Mr. Harpster himself has been so open with the communication and so swift to resolve any technical issues. So that's been amazing. Yeah, reflecting on my personal relationship with the United Nations throughout my life has been a very interesting exercise for me. I was born in a small town in Namibia, Gobabis, and growing up, I have like these vague memories, some of my earliest memories, in fact, of seeing these UNTOG insignia spray painted on like walls or vehicles. I mean, by that time they had already started moving out, of course, so it was just sporadically here and there. I was born in 1994, and Namibia had become a democratically elected nation 4 years earlier in 1990, when President Sam Nujoma was chosen as our first elected leader, with the help of the UNTOG forces, obviously helping to transition. Anyway, just so thinking back about this now, it was really poignant to me to think about how different that experience must have been to him. Me seeing those letters spray painted on walls and whatever, it had no significance to me. Obviously, I was a child and I grew up in that system. So, but what it must have meant to him must have been so much more significant. So that's been very striking to me. Anyway, as I grew up, I moved to South Africa, and UNTOG obviously faded in my memory, like with most of your childhood memories, and reality took center stage. But I kept like having this deepening interest in global affairs and a special interest in some of the Ubuntu ethics as proposed by some of the most interesting figures in South Africa's history. And that brought the UN back into my consciousness. But even then, it remained like this distant force of global governance and diplomacy that, you know, it was a step removed from normal life. But at least I think that was enough to plant the seed that helped me to recognize the opportunity when I saw the registration for the MOOC. And yeah, I've just been so happy with my decision to sign up. It's really been illuminating to see some of the pathways available to anyone hoping to make a difference through policy, and just also understanding the processes involved with these global policy making decisions. And yeah, most importantly, perhaps it's helped to reinstill some of the hope and trust I have in individuals and nations to work together towards a common greater good. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to the summit. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Willem, all the way from Namibia. So that's quite interesting. We really are going over the globe, guys. This is really becoming a global summit, hey, with everyone from all different areas of the country and of the world. Of course, now let me try once more, my dear friend over here for Yesa. Albera, let's go for it again.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, thanks, Ed. Now I'm audible. I'm Faisal Uluma. I'm joining from Ethiopia. Sorry for the little bit. I caught a connection. I lost the connectivity, and sorry for that. Good afternoon, dear program director. Good afternoon, dear delegates, presenters, honorable guests, and all participating individuals. I am Faisal Uluma, joining from Ethiopia. I'm a LLD student at the University of South Africa, College of Law, Department of Mercantile Law. I'm specializing on intellectual property, and particularly doing my research on how to use intellectual property in development. And this is the hot issue, especially between the both big blocks of global north and global south. And I have been involved in ad hoc and through invitation from ADO and the MOOC UN model course. And I want to say thanks for the university and for the experts from DIAS from India for giving us the opportunity and entertaining us with diversified issues. As I mentioned, I have been working on how to utilize intellectual property in development. So the contentious issue between the global south and the global north, and where the global north, the Western countries try to put some guidance, some way out for the global south, the developing countries, and where the developing countries are get stuck and through the process. And I have been thinking of how these rules are actually made, how these rules at World Intellectual Property and World Trade Organization, World Health Organization have been made. I have been thinking of to know how actually these rules are being made, and the model UN MOOC that is provided by ADO and moderated by experts from DIAS become a good opportunity for me, and I grasped the chance. And as the process simulates the process of UN and other international organizations, it's a good opportunity for me to know how the process are actually done in the room. And it's actually with the objective of to know how practically things are done and how it functions on the ground. And after I joined the course, I found the course very interesting. The means the curriculum wise, the methodology wise, as well as expertise wise from the course deliverers, as well as those content of the course on the website. I found it beyond expectation. And sometimes when we are in the classroom, actually it seems that we were in the room, and actually we are engaging in the actual room. So the course have a potential of equipping the learner with relevant expertise, relevant knowledge, relevant exercises, and have a power of mimicking, a power of triggering the learner to be actually in the process. So I think that the course have a power of pushing more leaders in forefront in the future from Africa, and particularly related to with my area of research in areas where we have been actually lacking good expertise in the room of negotiations, good expertise in the room of, I see two things. The first thing is willingness to represent, to say something, to take risk, and the other one is to know how to do things. So I believe that this course helped in both cases. The first thing, equipping future leaders, and the second thing, creating willingness, voluntariness to represent the global south, plus all the needy part in the process. So coming to the summit, I believe that this summit is a possible way of creating the future generations, not just a summit to show how we know things, how things go in practical life, but it has a power of creating the future generation. Plus, it is have a power to show blueprint of how to use green technologies for Africa development, not just Africa, for global South as well. So it is a possible way of reaffirming we can shift from fossil fuel, from oil to green technologies, particularly using from winds, from like recent practice from Ethiopia, Great Renaissance Dam, taking initiatives, taking risk, and getting to the green technology. And that's all on my part. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all the student voices that you guys have presented yourselves very well. Very impressed. Thank you once more. Appreciate it. I hope you guys are excited for the next part of the journey that you're on. And I definitely think you guys are doing some wonderful things there. So let's continue with the program. Unfortunately, our presenter could not join us, or is currently traveling. You might have heard the students referring to him, Mr. Kashyap Gupta. He was our expert for last year in the MOOC. He did all the training, facilitating. So unfortunately, he's busy traveling, so the sound quality, the network is not very great. So I will actually now just step in and just share with you guys some very useful information, just to understand who are these facilitators that are going to be facilitating the next day in a bit with the different sessions with the delegates. So with our ECOSOC, so that's your Economic and Social Council, guys. So these guys pretty much look at addressing the global economic and social issues. This committee really is for harnessing green technologies to promote sustainable development in Africa and inclusive, resilient, and environmentally sound as well. So there is an agenda that they're following. It's about green technologies and economic growth. So the delegates are going to be working with the two facilitators that we have. You'll notice they are very young people, but very experienced people as well. Mr. Richard Gould and Ms. Vaneshri Singh. And both of these guys, you might have met them last week for the students who were the delegates who came for the prep meetings. And they are going to be tackling the agenda about exploring green technologies with everyone. So it's really going to be interesting. So I hope those delegates are ready to go, because we'll be starting in just over half an hour's time. They're going to be busy over there. But remember, for the guys that are not part of the delegate team, please join us again on Thursday evening so we can get some feedback from the students who are attending these sessions as well. Then we've got the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. I'm sure you've heard about this one. It's a very common one. I think at some point there were even Barcelona sponsors or something like that, the soccer team. So yes, so UNESCO, guys, promotes education and sustainable development. So that's very, very important. They do have a lot of innovation in education, in equipping skills and knowledge. And the agenda for that is going to be broadcast over the next day and a half is really about integrating sustainability and green technologies in education systems globally. So that's really, really important as well. And again, we've got two young people, but experts in their field, Ms. Simran Kumar and Ms. Anushka Sethi. And they are going to be leading the next day and a half this committee with the different countries. That's why you'll notice people have got countries as profile pictures. And then, of course, we've got the World Health Organization. I'm sure with COVID, everybody got to hear about the World Health Organization. And we've got, again, two facilitators, Mr. Meet Gould and Mr. Prana Dhaka. And again, young people, but experts, really, really know their stuff. We met them last week, as I indicated, and they are really going to be focusing on WHO. So what does WHO do, guys? Public health issues. So that's really what they're doing. That's what they're addressing. Of course, now we're going to look from the angle of climate change and green technologies. How do we improve air quality and protect public health? So definitely things that affect all of us. And then, of course, the agenda is really about the link between the green technologies and public health. So they're going to be delving into that. They've got, as I said, a day and a half. The delegates have been prepared. They are going to be engaging in conversations. It's going to be very interesting stuff. But as I'm saying, please join us on Thursday so you can then have insights into what the delegates have been going up to. So this is really much thank you for the team, and these guys are all located in India. So there is a time difference of about 4 hours. So for us now it's going on to 4 o'clock, and for them it's 8 o'clock already, but they are committed. They're going to be with us to the late hours of the day in their time, and of course quite well evening for our time. So we've tried to balance the time, understanding the different roles. So guys, without further ado, I'm just going to call on Ms. Nathma Sami, who's going to do the closing for us. And then of course the delegates, please check your emails. I will be reminding you once more. Thanks, Nathma.
Thank you, David. Just let me know when you can see my screen. I will try to keep it as short as possible. I know we're on a time crunch. Okay, thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. When thinking about everything we've heard today, everyone that has been here today, I think it becomes very easy for us to see that we're not in an ordinary race against climate change. We're actually in both a marathon and a relay. And when we say a marathon and a relay, when we look at a marathon, we understand that it's going to be a long path, it's going to be a challenging path. We're going to have resilience, and we're going to have to be strong, essentially. We also saw that there's many elements and interlinked elements, and we're going to have to find our way through this. And that's where the other part comes into play. This race is also a relay. We're going to have to rely on each other. We're going to have to rely on each other the same way we did in today's context, where we had different speakers from different spheres, and we could basically inform each other and co-create solutions as we are in this race against climate change together. So in saying that, I think that we did set a good stage for the upcoming committees that are coming up, and I'd like to just thank our Executive Dean, Prof. Mohanu. She has always supported everything, and also in the sphere of climate change, our opening speakers for the 18th and 20th. We have to say thank you to everyone, to Mr. James Reeler, to Mrs. Ariel, to Ms. Medehi. Thank you so much for engaging with us and also engaging with the entire audience. Thank you to the World Wildlife Fund, and in particular, the coordinator, Ms. Eloise Berger, who we often refer to as the guardian angel of the World Wildlife Fund, the Climate Action Network, the Institute of Economic Justice, and Ngeli. And those speakers will be joining us on the 20th as well, so please do join in. The MOOC participants and our students that presented today, I think I speak for everyone when I say we are incredibly proud of your growth, and we can't wait to see how this continues throughout the course of the 3 days. Our facilitators, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and equipping us with skills for the future. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Gupta and Dr. Chetty, as well as the DIAS team and the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub team, and in particular, Mr. David Harperstud. I think we can really see that they have poured their hearts and souls in today's event, and also all the other initiatives aimed at combating climate change. So without saying too much, I'd like to thank everyone, and please don't forget to join into your committees that you were allocated from here on out. And thank you so much, David. Back on to you.
Thank you so much, Nathma. I see lots of hearts and hand claps coming through. Really appreciate it. Very importantly, guys, before you leave the event today, we have posted the feedback form, which is very critical for our work, that can really enhance everything you've learned today and what else you would like to be seeing and how can you get involved. So please do give us your feedback in the survey. I'm posting it in the chat a few times. Your feedback is critical. I will also email it out to everyone that has joined us today. Thank you so much for the delegates. I'll be seeing you at 4:30 on the other side. I have just sent you an email with the link, so please make sure you join, and I'll see you with all your different flags on that side. The rest of the guys, have a lovely evening further, and hope to see you again on Thursday. Bye.